My name is Brie Wells, and this is my blog when I was asking the question, who am I? This is part 2. I was locked into a small cell in the center of a hallway of such little rooms. It made me think of all the television shows showing crazy people locked into similar type rooms, no windows, one door, and a bench with which to sit. Each of us placed in different rooms, and that is when Kathy freaked out and began to scream. An officer banged on her door and told her to be quiet. I held my breath and prayed. Finally, I was told my mother showed up, and I was taken out of the cell and guided to the desk of the lady detective. And she asked one question: what happened? In all that time of contemplation, you'd think I'd have time to reflect on my criminal indiscretion and apologize. Nope. As I said earlier, I sang like a canary. I threw Tina under the bus so far she could have come out the exhaust pipe. I said it wasn't my fault. It was all Tina. She gave me the wallet and told me to put it in my bag. And the lady detective held up her hand to me and said, "Hold it right there." My heart stopped beating. I raised my head and finally came face to face with the woman detective. Have you ever sat in front of someone who holds the cards to your future? Have you ever looked into the eyes of the person who can reduce you to a puddle of blubbering snot? At age 12, I was clueless to the power dynamic. The thing that surprised me was how young and pretty she was, but a hardness she couldn't conceal underlined all that soft hair and makeup. She said, "The best thing you can do in this moment is to tell the truth." Now, at any time, did you ask Tina not to do this? I shook my head and said no. She never said a thing. I put the wallet in my bag. Good. Now you need to think about your future and where you want to end up. If you keep going this way, you'll end up spending a lot of time inside a cell just like that one. She pointed to the hallway of the little sterile rooms with cement block walls painted a ghastly green. Then she sent me to sit on the bench at the far side and spoke with my mother privately. I don't know what they talked about. I didn't want to know. On the drive home, my mother and I didn't talk. When we arrived, I went into my room and sat at my desk and prayed. But this time, I prayed for guidance. I didn't like what happened. More importantly, I didn't like how I behaved. I wonder, how had I changed? Where was the girl who helped the different looking girl on the 3rd grade playground? What happened to the girl that was willing to shout down angry kids throwing rocks at her simply because she was different? Where and when did I get so lost? That Monday I returned to school, but my friendship with Kathy, Cindy, and Tina had faded. Luckily, a girl named Molly took pity on me, and we became fast friends for the remainder of 8th grade. Mostly she told me about her crush on a boy named Todd, and I was a good listener for her long-winded stories of how he looked at her in math class or didn't look at her that day. I did my best to stay on the straight and narrow and not get seduced into the ongoing explosion of adolescent behavior around me. But by the end of 8th grade, and parties can be tempting, in the last week of school, Kathy had a graduation party and I attended. We played Spin the Bottle and I got a kiss from Joe Smoot, a boy I had a crush on since 7th grade. But that was tame compared to the one that exploded a few days later at Cindy's house. Her parents had left for Australia to visit family, and perhaps in hindsight, they could have chosen a different month for an extended vacation, like say after graduation. In their absence, Cindy's older sister, Monica, a 19-year-old senior in high school, hosted an event. Word spread of a party with no adult supervision, and several high school boys arrived with liquor, drugs, and cigarettes. It turned epic quickly. Remember I said Cindy lived a few houses down the street from me? No one in the neighborhood could miss the loud music, cars racing up and down the street, and shouts of joyful teens. Cindy called me to come over to help. When I arrived, there were makeout sessions in every dark corner inside and outside her house. One disgruntled neighbor called the police to break it up, and I watched as Monica was placed in the back seat of the squad car and taken in. But if the police thought she'd be ashamed by her arrest, it didn't work. The whole time she walked like a movie star because she knew her reputation as a bad girl had skyrocketed. Cindy, however, was mortified. One officer took Cindy and I to my house and asked my mother if Cindy could spend the week with us, given that her parents were still abroad. Of course she could. And that eased any residual tension from our shoplifting episode, and we were friends again. I completed intermediate school with a slightly above average grade, and summer with many sunny beaches and surfing beckoned now that Cindy and I were friends again. My mother had other plans and announced that my younger brother and I were to spend the summer in Minnesota with my father. I wasn't unhappy about that. I figured I could see my old friends and play basketball with the neighborhood guys and swim in one of the many lakes around the city. I welcomed the breather from the fast-paced, unguided life in California. Whatever your fate is, whatever hell happens, you say, this is what I need. It may look like a wreck, but go at it as though it were an opportunity, a challenge. If you bring love to that moment, not discouragement, you will find the strength is there. Any disaster you can survive is an improvement in your character, your stature, and your life. Joseph Campbell.